Hey, if you're pregnant over 40, I have just the community for you. It's a private community away from Facebook where women just like you come together to meet and support one another during pregnancy. To sign up for the waitlist, go to over40fabulousandpregnant.com/waitlist and be the first to know when the membership is open. I can't wait to see you inside. Welcome to Over 40 Fabulous and Pregnant. I am your host, Jamie Massey, and you're listening to episode 37. If you're looking for pregnancy stories of women over 40, you've come to the right place. Today on the show, we have Sam from Australia, who is sharing her pregnancy story at 42. And what is so inspiring is that her fertility journey started in New York, and at 29 weeks she packed everything up to move all the way back to Australia so she could be closer to her family. And I'm so excited to support Sam's journey doing this as a single parent. I think it's such a beautiful story. Before I was married, I was a serial dater, and I kind of gave up the idea that I would ever meet someone. And if it wasn't for my husband, I could totally see myself doing this journey alone also. And I commend her for being so independent and having all the courage to do this, and for all the other women doing it alongside her. And while Sam and I were recording the show, I could see this bright lightning strike and a huge clap of thunder. It really scared me. It was humorous and totally interrupted the show. And so I cut that piece of the show out and I put it after the outro music of the show. So if you want to get a little laugh and a blooper, if you will, enjoy that at the very end of the show. I forgot to mention last week on the show that I was actually a guest on Bethany's podcast called Whole Woman Health Podcast. She was a guest on my show. She invited me on her show to share my fertility journey. Now, it's not done yet, but it was such a fun, and it turned out so good. I'm proud of myself. It was really good. And, we talked about loss, because that's the only thing I know. And we still laughed, and I almost cried, and it was such a good, fun experience. So if you want to listen to that, I will leave a link in the description. Also, you might notice that I don't have any advertisements on the show, and I intend to keep it that way. I don't want to go that route. I am still working to create a community, and so I never intend to put advertisements on the show. And I just want to be totally transparent about that. And one thing I would like to ask you, will you please put a review on Apple and please give me 5 stars. This helps me be able to share to other women like you, and I would really appreciate it. If you can't give me 5 stars, please email me and tell me. I always want to make this show better for you. And with that, let's get into Sam's solo journey at 42. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And before we get to your pregnancy story, Sam, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 42 years old. I live in Australia. I have been traveling around the world pretty much most of my life, so very independent person. I work full time for a travel company. Like I said, travel is my life. So I've been to 72 countries and 7 continents, lived over 3 countries. Just came back to Australia actually at 30 weeks pregnant. So yeah, I just pretty much live to work and work to live and work to travel essentially is my life goal. So obviously that's changing quite a lot these days.
So let's go back to the beginning when you first started your journey.
So I actually got told when I was 27 years old that I couldn't have children. That was back in when I lived in London. So I pretty much put out pregnancy completely from my brain, got rid of the whole thought and notion of having children.
What
And
did they say? Why couldn't you have children?
so I have endometriosis.
Mm.
And so I had a couple of laparoscopies, and they said after those that and this was back in the day when I was very naive as well, 27 years old, didn't know the right questions to ask, and trusting the NHS doctors in the UK and just figuring out things. And I had no idea. So it really came down to them saying, oh, it's almost impossible for you to fall pregnant because you've got endometriosis, which is basically the be all and end all of what put that notion out of my head. And I was with my ex at the time, and we both said, all right, well, we'll just keep trying anyway. And then we broke up a few years later, and sort of got to this point. I hit my 40th birthday in 2020 of all times, in the middle of the lockdown in New York, and was like, you know what, I'm really curious if I'm fertile. And I guess the loneliness of COVID and everything just made me realize that, hey, I'm really missing something from my life. I've kept myself busy for so long, really kind of pushing that notion of kids out of my head because I kept busy. So I was traveling and going to festivals and concerts and working 24/7 and just, really sort of living life. And then COVID kind of really changed my perspective on everything,
Mhm.
and being so lonely and isolated, even in a city like New York City, when, there's millions of people. It was very isolating during COVID. So I went and got my fertility tested once everything kind of reopened in September, and they came back with amazing numbers on paper.
Mhm.
So the numbers came back and good AMH and all that stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, you shouldn't have any problems falling pregnant. So that was definitely a eye opener and brought me a
Mhm.
lot of tears that I'd wasted so many years of my life not having children. I'd been single for the good part of a decade anyway, so that didn't help the situation. But I probably did that, subconsciously, remaining single because I kind of didn't want to disappoint anyone with the fact that I couldn't have kids.
Mm. You were in New York whenever you started all this.
I was, yeah. So I started out September 2020, New York City, and just moved back to Australia this year in January.
Okay.
So I did the whole process over there.
So how did you start the process with, like, did you use a sperm donor? How did you go about that?
Yeah, so when I first started looking into the pregnancy journey, I actually had a couple of friends back in Australia that had a single mothers by choice. And
Mhm.
that sort of gave me that little firecracker to, hey, this can be done. I can do this on my own.
Mhm.
So I started down the rabbit hole of all of the donor websites, all the cryobanks. Oh my gosh, it was very overwhelming. Probably the hardest part of the journey, and really sort of picking a donor and going down, and I started a blog about it and how to, you know, how what to do to pick a donor. So, I started doing all of these webinars with the cryobanks to get free memberships. So it's a really good hot tip if anyone is doing that. If you do the webinars, you can get free membership to their website, which normally is anywhere from $50 to $250 to join up
Wow.
to look at the donor sperm. But once you get in there, it's choosing all the filters and getting everything done. And of course, prior to actually choosing the donor, you have to get approved through your fertility clinic to make sure that all the genetic testing is done, to make sure that you're not picking a donor that has the same genetic disorder as
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
So once I got 10,000, what felt like 10,000 blood vials drawn from me, I got all the results back from that. that's when I started to really sort of knuckle down and select the donor before anything even happened at the fertility clinic, because we needed to be ready. But during that time was a really important time to start tracking cycles, really downloading the apps and peeing on sticks every few days, tracking the LH levels and making sure that everything was working as expected, and everything was perfect for me. It was really the app predicted when I would be ovulating, and I'd pee on a stick and I was ovulating. So my cycles were very, very regular. From someone who had endometriosis 13 years prior, I'd had pretty regular cycles since my laparoscopies. But yeah, really getting all the numbers and the tests and the donor picking, all of that stuff kind of all happened very quickly within the space of a month. And then I was told that I couldn't start fertility treatment until I'd got either signed a waiver or got vaccinated. I wasn't immune to chickenpox, so I had to get the varicella vaccine, which put me on a 3-month delay of starting any fertility treatment, because they have to do one injection and then 30 days later do another injection, and then they won't start fertility treatment until 30 days after that. I am pro-vaccine, so I was, all right, let's get that done. I know how dangerous chickenpox can be in an adult, so I didn't hesitate doing that.
Yeah. What about picking out a donor? How was that for you? And also, what was your plan going into this? Was it IVF or were you going to do an IUI?
Yeah, so when we started out, the doctor suggested going straight to IVF. So that obviously played a lot on my mind as to cost and also just how much was involved in the IVF world. So I actually decided with my doctor to start with 2 IUIs. So that determined what sort of vials I would purchase from the donor bank as well, the cryobank. So she said that my chances through IUI were about 5%. Being because I was 40 years old. So there's that first thing about being 40 is, hey, you've got very slim chance. So, being told 27 can't have kids and now at 40, hey, you're going to have a really big problem trying to get pregnant again.
Yeah.
But we decided we'd do 2 IUIs. So when purchasing a donor sperm, you have to buy the washed vials. So the sperm is separated from the semen. So because the IUI obviously is getting right up into the uterus. But picking a donor itself is, like I said, probably the hardest part of the whole process. Trying to not look at the donor as in, hey, would I date this guy? Or it's more, hey, this is going to be the genetics of my child. So I really kind of left most of the filters off and basically went through the genetic history and the medical history of the donor. Was my biggest key to picking somebody. I did also choose the donor based on a couple of things. I wanted to make sure that race, being a single mother, always is going to be a little bit hard. I would, nothing against any, I would love a little mixed race baby, but unfortunately being in Australia, it can be quite difficult, and already being a single mum by choice, that was one of the key points for me to choose a donor with a white background. Just purely to make my life and the baby's life a little bit easier, because it was already going to be, we knew, challenging being an older mum and living in Australia and just being single as well. So, a little bit less challenges.
Yeah. Was there anything else important to you with a donor?
No, not at all. Originally, I'd selected the blue eyes, the blonde hair, and the tall donor and the skinny donor. And after a while, you kind of just, you know what, don't need any of that. One thing I did look into was the blood type. So the RH blood type, I ended up going with a O negative blood donor, which is the same as me. Now, this was my first donor. So I did go through 2, but I'll get to that later. But the first donor I chose O negative, thinking that if, hey, it's the same as me, it might be easier because we're all compatible. It doesn't work like that.
Did you think there was a higher chance of you getting pregnant because it was the same blood type?
I did, yeah. I really sort of went down a rabbit hole of researching blood types, and the rabbit hole probably wasn't good. It was Dr. Google, really not using the right chains. But when I discovered O negative is actually apparently a harder blood type to fall pregnant. So that was one thing my doctor even had told me, but this was probably a little bit too late. So this was after I'd done my 2 IUIs and started my IVF journey. It turns out that that's not accurate. So it doesn't really matter of your blood type.
So now you have a donor and you chose 2 vials. How do they normally purchase that? Because I know egg donation, they're usually 6 to 8 eggs. So what is it like on the other side?
Yeah, so I actually purchased 4 vials of washed sperm.
Mhm.
So the IUI vials, because they say with the clinic that you need to have 2 vials per cycle, just in case one is not valid. And not valid basically means it doesn't have enough swimmers in it. So the mobility
Gotcha.
of the sperm needs to be above 5 million in order to proceed with the procedure. And if it's under that, then they would defrost the second vial ready to go. So you're not wasting a cycle, essentially.
And were they all from the same donor?
This one was, yeah. So I
Okay.
chose, used Zytec was the company, and 4 vials of the same donor, yep.
Okay.
Thinking that would be all I needed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then what? I guess the doctor does all this, correct?
No, so you actually go through the website and do the purchase of it. You put in your clinic and your physician's name, and then once you purchase the vials, you can either store them at the cryobank or you can have them shipped to your clinic. And depending on which is cheaper for storage, because you do have to, once you buy the vials, which are already about $1,000 each US, give or take, anywhere from $700 to $1,400 for a vial. I chose to ship only 2 of them to my clinic, and I kept 2 of them in storage at Zytec because they offered me over 2 vials, you get free storage for up to 12 months. So I kept 2 vials with the bank and 2 vials with the clinic. And so the clinic held on to them. You get them shipped, so essentially in dry ice. They ship them out, FedEx overnight. The clinic receives them. You pay an intake fee, and then they store the vials until you're ready to go for your cycle.
Okay.
And they also charge you storage as well.
Of course.
Yeah, it's all about money.
Yes. So then what happened from there?
So after that, once I was ready to start my IUI cycle, I, would go in for monitoring at the beginning on cycle day 3, and then make sure that I've got some follicles growing. I was on letrozole, 5 milligrams twice a day, I believe. It seems like so long ago now. So many pills and needles later. So on letrozole, we started that on day 3 and went till day 8, I believe. It was 5 days of letrozole, and then kept going in for monitoring every 2 or 3 days. And then once the actual follicles looked like they were of decent size, so I had 3 follicles growing, all of very even numbers and decent sizes. Going in for the actual treatment itself is very quick and, for me, painless. I know some women do experience pain with the IUIs, but very over and done with in less than 3 minutes. It was it was quite crazy how fast it all was. It's like, oh, I could be pregnant. But, they use the beautiful duck clamps, that we all love to hate. Get a date with Wanda first, the internal ultrasound machine, just to make sure that everything's on track. And then the clamps go in and they insert a catheter right up into the uterus and inject the washed sperm, literally over and done with in seconds. They tell you can sit down and wait for 10 minutes after the procedure, or you can get up and go. To be honest, I just got up and left. A lot of the superstitions are that you got to lay down for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, put your legs up in the air. But that's not really the case for an IUI. It's proven medically that it's not necessary because the sperm's already in your uterus, so it doesn't have to swim up your tubes. So it's already up there. It doesn't need to go any further. It's just got to find the right egg. Oh, I did forget about the injection though. So you do a trigger shot 2 days prior, or about 36 hours prior to the actual IUI as well, to trigger ovulation so that the egg drops down.
It sounds really similar to the egg retrieval process.
Yeah, quite similar, except without all the needles. It's just that one needle, one trigger shot.
Oh, okay.
And you're wide awake. Yeah.
You had 3 follicles. Was there any concern about triplets or multiples?
I definitely asked the question because that was terrifying, being a single mum by choice. There is the risk obviously it's a risk of anyone having multiples, but being that my chances were only less than 5% anyway, it's not as often that will happen with a sort of older eggs as well, because we just don't know the quality of the eggs being older. And I hate to use the word, but what do they call us? Geriatric pregnancies. It's terrible. Mature age. But so the fear was there, but the doctor reassured me that, if it happens, it happens, but it's a very, very small percentage chance to have multiples.
Okay, so now I think you had the 2-week wait also. How did you spend that?
The dreaded 2-week wait. Oh, it was terrible. I actually just kept myself really busy, to be honest. I was working full time. The day of the IUI, I went straight back to work. I didn't go home. I didn't rest. I didn't take the day off. I just wanted to keep my brain busy, which I thought was a really good thing to do. This was the first one anyway. I made sure that I ate really well during that week and kept my feet warm and cozy and ate some beautiful, nourished green vegetables and warm foods and really kind of just didn't overspot. I didn't do any symptom spotting, believe it or not, for this first one. I kind of just wanted to forget that it even happened and then just think about it 2 weeks later, which I know most women are polar opposite, but I'm pretty good at pushing things to the side for the most part. So for the first one anyway. But really that 2-week wait it still plays on your mind, right? I was having dreams like crazy that week, and I had dreams that I was pregnant. I had miscarriage dreams even that week. Like it was pretty rough at nighttime, but during the day it was fine because my work keeps me very, very busy. So I didn't really have much opportunity to even think otherwise. So yeah.
So bring us back. Did you do a pregnancy test or did you wait for the phone call?
So day 12 it was, I started feeling period cramps and my lower back ache. And that's when I was like, my lower back pains. And that's when I kind of started going, right, is it, isn't it? And then knowing that, period pains and symptoms can be very similar to pregnancy pains and symptoms. So, but I was almost positive that it didn't work because I know my lower back pain and I know that's usually my indication. And day 13 is when I did a pregnancy test at home. And it was definitely negative. And that's when I called the clinic and my period started the same day. So it was very heavy. So it was pretty normal. And the clinic said, don't even bother coming in for a beta, seeing as though you've got a really heavy period and you've tested negative, let's figure out what we're going to do next. And next steps were, let's go straight into another IUI. So the cycle started all over again.
Did you do that the very next cycle?
I did, yeah. So January 2020 was my first cycle and then went straight into it in February cycle. So I went in for monitoring again on day 2 of my period and then checked that I'd had some follicles and did all the blood tests to make sure that I'd ovulated and all that goodness. And kickstarted another cycle again and pretty much repeated that whole process.
Was it any different than the first one?
No. So it was, the difference there was I was symptom spotting. The second one was a little bit harder for me because I thought I was one of those people who thought one and done. As a lot of people going into this when they get told their numbers, right? They're like, hey, you've got good AMH for your age. Everything looks great on paper. I was like, it's going to be one and done easily. So when that first one didn't work, it did break my heart a little bit. And going into the second one, I was like, okay, let's do this. And I think the second 2-week wait was a lot harder. Really sort of looking at everything. Oh, I have a craving. Like, is it too early to have a craving? I have little twinges in my uterus. What is that? What does that feel like? And then, you start going down the rabbit hole of Googling symptoms and seeing, am I pregnant? I did actually test on day 11 with the second cycle. And I got the negative. I didn't test out my trigger shot, so I knew that I had to wait. So when you get the trigger shot, which is right before the IUI, about 36 hours, that obviously can test positive pregnancy up until about day 7. So I didn't test that out for either cycle. I just knew if I did that, I would hate to be looking at also spending money on pregnancy tests every single day, which adds up, as well as then sort of probably making me more anxious if I was to do that. So I chose not to do too many tests
Mm-hmm.
during that time. But then, that second negative, that's when I was pretty heartbroken at that time, thinking, okay, I'm broken. The emotions really start taking over you over that stage, and thinking, what have I done wrong? Is it me? My eggs are old, I'm old.
Mm-hmm.
Really kind of starting to put yourself down about it, which started to get very difficult. But I had a really good conversation with my doctor after that, and she said, we knew the chances were slim. You had less than 5% chance getting pregnant. What do you want to do next? And I said, I need to take a little break. So I had a couple of music festivals and 2 trips coming up. So I was like, you know what? Before I do anything else, I'm going to take a little break. So I did. And I said, it was February then. And I said, let's pick this up in May and let's start on IVF.
So you did an egg retrieval.
Yeah. So after a fantastic trip to the Bahamas, I was all relaxed and feeling good, and seen my best friend who I hadn't seen since the start of COVID. I got back in May and started the process of IVF, and obviously getting all the medications. It is a minefield of information out there, costs and insurance and where to get things and how to do things. And I really found the process at the beginning I was very lost, especially with the whole money and insurance.
Yeah.
Insurance in America is mind-blowing of just how complicated it gets. And I was lucky that I had $25,000 worth of fertility coverage with my health insurance.
That's great.
But trying to get a straight answer from insurance as to what's actually included in that $25K was virtually impossible. No one could really tell you. We're like, the IUIs may be included, they may not be included. Your morning monitoring, we don't know. You just have to wait until we get billed. And I'm like, well, do I pay the upfront cost to the clinic, which cash upfront is cheaper if you're paying for a cycle, or if you get billed and then they reject it, it's going to be more expensive. So navigating insurance is probably the thing that I would suggest to anyone starting this journey, is to really get a good person to talk you through everything that's included and what's not included. Because I went out and I spent $4,000 on medication, cash out of pocket, because the insurance lady had told me that medications weren't included in my coverage. So I went out and forked out of pocket for some of my meds, which is the follistim injections and the ganirelix, which I can never pronounce, and a bunch of other menopur and all those things as well. So, a lot of money forked out, and then started the injections. And then that was on cycle day 2, started IVF injections. My first needle was fine. It's surprising how much your brain really switches on and says, you can't do this. And then you just have to talk yourself through it. And as a single person, I didn't have a support group. I didn't have a support person at home to help me or to talk me into it. So, I had my best friend on Zoom talking me through my needles, saying, come on, Sam, you can do this, And I was like, oh, it's going to get into my fat rolls. And she would joke that it's your muscle roll. So you really just need someone to make light of the situation and get past that brain block that says it's okay to inject yourself. After the first day, I could do it with my eyes closed, really. It was really quite simple.
Yeah, my husband made me do mine. And I am a serious fainter, a very serious fainter. And he goes,
oh no.
He said, Jamie, I was scared to death. Thought I was going to make him do it. And he said, do you want a baby or do you want me to do it? And I was like, done. I did all of them. Yeah. It really helped me get through it, but
it does. I think mentally, even if you have that support person, I think mentally doing the injections yourself is it's empowering as well, because hey, I'm doing everything I can to bring a baby into this world, and kind of getting past that point of, yep, let's just do it. Let's just get it done. Yeah. You really don't even think about it after a while.
So how did the egg retrieval go?
Yeah, so my first egg retrieval, it went really smoothly, actually. I went in on the day and basically had very little expectations because, let's face it, I was 40. They will tell you, you might not get a lot, but during all the monitoring, we had quite a lot of follicles, actually. We were noticing about 15 to 18 follicles. so we did really, they were really impressed. They're like, oh, for someone your age, again, the age thing just kept coming up. And, oh, you did really well, and so on and so on. And then after a while, I started joking that and this kind of comes into a story of where my baby's nickname comes from, is her nickname is Choc Chip Cookie. Looking at the follicles in the ultrasound, when you look at an ovary and all the follicles, it looks like a chocolate chip cookie. So that's how my nickname for baby came about. And every time I went in, I was like, oh, the cookies look good today. But yeah, we eventually went in for the egg retrieval, and I got 18 eggs that
That's
day,
great.
which was amazing. When I came to out of the twilight zone and they told me I had 18 eggs, I was jumping for joy. I thought, for sure, not going to get anything. And then I got the mature rate within the 24 hours. So 16 of my eggs were mature.
Wow.
And then 14 of them fertilized.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so you could tell I was like, oh, these numbers are fantastic, right? 18, 16, and 14 fertilized eggs at 40-year-old eggs sounds amazing. And then the 2-week or the 5-day wait happens. And that 5 days, you're just sitting there with bated breath, just waiting. And I had such high hopes, thinking, oh gosh, this is, 14, the average rate is 50%. So I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get like 6 or 7 embryos at least. And then I get the call on day 7 and I had 2 embryos.
Wow.
So that was a really big drop rate.
Yeah.
That was obviously devastating at that day. But I did choose to do PGT testing, so the testing on the embryos, knowing that, 2 embryos being sent off is not good odds coming back. And then that was the hardest 2-week wait, was waiting for the embryos to be tested. So, and then I got the call from the doctor and I knew immediately it wasn't good news. I could tell from her voice. She said, sorry, Sam, they both come back abnormal, missing a ton of chromosomes. So there was zero chance they would have even implanted. I mean, if they did, it probably would have ended in miscarriage, unfortunately. So I am glad I tested them. And I don't think I could have handled multiple losses without testing, and each to their own with the PGT testing. But for me, it was pretty necessary, because I knew being single and alone and doing this process, I couldn't have handled that too much.
Yeah. So where did you go from here?
So we decided that we would do another egg retrieval. So we jumped in and did another one, and that was the next month. So we went straight into a new cycle. And that, again, I got pretty decent numbers there again. I got 14 eggs. 13 of them are mature, but then I lost 50% in fertilization. So I had 7 fertilized and then 2 embryos again. So seemed to be the common theme was 2 embryos and 0 of them came back normal again. So it was 2 cycles down, see you later, bye. And then we like, right, what do you want to do? I was like, let's do another one. Let's do another cycle, but this time I waited. So I waited quite a few months, actually. I took a few months off because I just needed my body to have a break. Being back-to-back IUIs and then back-to-back IVF cycles. In December 2021, I decided to go ahead and do another egg retrieval, and I started injections. And on day 8 of stims, of giving myself needles every day, I got COVID. Yeah. So it was pretty devastating. I went into the clinic, even though I had COVID. They said, please come in. We need to check that, because I've already been 8 days of injecting, and typically I was about 10 days before I would do my trigger. So I was pretty close to the end of that cycle. And it was funny enough that the follicles that then seen just 3 days beforehand had stopped growing completely. So obviously the COVID did affect my follicle egg growth and rates, because when we did that scan, it was absolutely, we're cancelling. You've got no growth. None of your follicles have grown since 3 days ago, and we couldn't even find as many follicles as we wanted to. So that was, again, 3rd cycle down, cancelled. And then I wanted to wait a little bit before we started the next one. So it was another 3 months later before I did a new IVF cycle. But by that stage, I'd used all my sperm vials. So I'd been through all 4 vials of my sperm. and the donor was no longer available. So I had to go down that whole rabbit hole of choosing a new donor again. But this one it was a bit easier this time around. I just went on and was like, yep, that'll do. Picked the donor and was happy, and didn't really look at much beyond the height and the genetic history, essentially, and making sure that the history was good and compatible with my body. So new donor, March 2021 came around, and 2022 came around, and I did a new egg retrieval. This time I got 12 eggs. 12 of them were mature and 10 of them fertilized.
Wow.
So I was already looking great on this cycle. I was like, this is much better. And then I got 5 embryos.
Your best one yet.
New donor. So I did 4 cycles, but only 3 retrievals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you doing anything different, diet or anything different on these?
I did, actually. I started taking a couple of extra vitamins as well. So I changed my prenatal from, I was taking Ritual, which now I've learned is a bit of a designer drug, a designer supplement, and changed to 1 a day prenatal. And I also, diet-wise, I pretty much cut out dairy. So I cut out all my dairy and just started eating a lot healthier and watching what I ate. But that was the big change that I made. Whether or not that worked, no idea. But it seemed to happen, and that was really the only thing that I changed. And I think the other thing that I did was I lived my life. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let IVF run my life anymore, and infertility. Instead, I chose to go to a massive music festival right before my retrieval. I went to concerts. I was living my life again. You know, the world was opening up at this stage. So we were all getting our freedom at that point. And I think lifestyle-wise, I just really enjoyed life rather than getting bogged down in the whole ritual of injections and everything like that. So really, I don't know if that made the difference too, of just the mindset of, hey, let's I hate this word, let's relax a little bit. But I did. I just chilled. I chilled out and made sure I was eating well and not eating a bunch of sugar and all that stuff, which I don't eat a lot of anyway. But really the dairy was the only big diet change that I did.
Okay. So now we have 10 blasts. You got those tested? Oh, 5. Then
5 blasts.
So you got them tested.
Yep, got them tested and got the call 2 weeks later. Again, I could tell by her voice it wasn't fantastic news. It was slightly good, but she started with, Sam, you got 1 embryo. You got 1 normal embryo. And I was like, burst into tears. I was outside my dentist at the time when I got the call. I'd just had a tooth extracted and I was already numb and mindless, and I had 1 embryo. I was ecstatic. So she said, you've got 1 normal, 2 mosaics, 1 abnormal, and 1 that was untestable. So they didn't know whether it was normal or abnormal. So she asked me with that one, do I want to get it retested? And I said, yep, rebiopsy and send it off. But 1 normal embryo and 2 mosaics was more than I've ever gotten in the 2 years that I'd been trying. So it was very exciting at that stage.
Now, tell me again what the mosaic means.
So mosaic, when they biopsy, it comes back with a mix of normal and abnormal cells. So they can't 100% tell whether it's normal or abnormal. It's just that they have a bit of both. So because when they biopsy, they take a certain number of cells from the embryo. And that cell particularly could be either or. Now, it has a much lower chance of pregnancy rather than the 50% chance I was given with my 1 normal. They say it's on average about 15 to 20%. A mosaic embryo can correct itself once it's implanted. So it could go either way. It's not fantastic, but it's a chance.
Did you take a break, or were you like, I need to get this thing transferred right away?
I took a break. I was like, nope, I'm going to go and live my life a little bit because I could be pregnant. I really I could be pregnant in a couple of months' time. So again, I went on a vacation, had a couple more music festivals. If you can't tell, I love my music festivals. And then come July is when I was like really ready to go. I was exercising every day So I really made a really good point to keep active, to keep the blood flow in my body. I wanted to really make sure that I was giving my body the best chance to fall pregnant, and I felt doing it right after the IVF cycle wasn't for me. I wanted to be clear of all the hormones and the injections and just be in a really good mindset. So I had from March until July is quite a few months break. And during that time, like I said, my diet was just healthy eating, lots of green vegetables, like I said, exercising 5-6 days a week, and kept that right up until the day of the transfer, just keeping my body healthy.
And how was the transfer?
Well, this was my first transfer. So, but again, it was very quick and easy, over and done with in what felt like seconds again. It was a bit more of a procedure than an IUI, just because of the whole embryo thawing, and I've got that whole additional step of the thawing, which makes you terrified that it's not going to survive the thaw, and I only had one embryo. So, but yeah, I did the transfer. I went home. I took that day off work, went home, watched some really funny movies and some funny comedians, because I was told laughter is the best medicine for post-transfer, that it really helps with implantation. Cooked up some bone broth and some nice delicious soups that week, and I actually exercised. So the first day after FET, my frozen embryo transfer, I didn't exercise for the first 48 hours, but I did go for a walk. And then every day after the 48 hours, I went on a 3 to 5 kilometer walk. So, approximately 2 to, I don't know, in miles, sorry. I still worked in kilometers. 3 to 5 kilometer walk. And I also used the stationary bike in my house. So I exercised every day after 48 hours. And I really feel like that sort of contributed to my success in that, because the blood flow is really important, is to keep that going through your body and working your body the way it should. So, rather than sitting still and doing nothing for the whole time, I exercised, I ate well, kept my feet warm, did all the little I didn't eat fries. I did not do the superstitious McDonald's fries. But yeah, I basically went through to 6 days post-transfer. And that's when I couldn't wait any longer, and I had to test. And it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I went to the bathroom. I saw the pregnancy test sitting there. They'd been staring at me in the face for the last 2 or 3 days. I was like, when should I test? And I told myself I wouldn't test till 6 days past transfer. And then that morning it was about 5:30 in the morning, and peed on the stick, went away. Came back 5 minutes later thinking absolutely not a chance. I did actually film myself walking into the bathroom to try and get my reaction either way, just in case. And I looked at the stick, and it was the faintest line. It was pregnant. I think I swore. I think my video, I was like, holy shit. And in my video, the face says it all. But yeah, I was pregnant, and then had my first beta on day 10. So 4 days later, I tested every day after that, obviously, as you do. It's line spotting, and it got darker and it got darker. And my first HCG came back as a positive. It was only 104, so it was quite small compared to a lot of people that I see. And yeah, the rest is history. It just kept getting darker and darker, and I think I kept testing until at least day 16 days past transfer, just to keep checking that I had a line, because I just still couldn't believe it. It was mind-blowing that it actually happened.
Yeah, what was your thoughts going through your head?
At first, it was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I was like, this is actually happening. Wow, I'm going to have a baby. What's going to happen? But then obviously the next 2 or 3 weeks, it was sheer terror of, I got to keep this baby in me. I've got to keep this baby. I've got to keep this baby. There's so many stories about miscarriage over 40 and what can I do to really help this little baby stick around? And I think every day you're just symptom spotting. You're just looking at your pants when you go to the bathroom and checking for blood. And every little moment is, I just did something. Is that going to hurt the baby? Or, it's just terrifying. I don't think there's anything joyful in it when you're really gone through the trenches to get pregnant. It takes the joy away from being pregnant. And I think they say the whole pregnancy is a giant 2-week wait. 40 weeks is the giant 2-week wait, because you're constantly fearful that something's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, it kept getting better and better. The lines were good, the ultrasound at 6 weeks, and we saw the little heartbeat and we heard the heartbeat. It was just, hearing that heartbeat was the first time I really went, okay, it's happening. She's here. The baby's here. I say she. I didn't know the gender at that stage, but the baby is, I actually kept calling her a she anyway, but that was just without knowing. But yeah, so I think it just kept going, and I got to 5 weeks pregnant, and that's when I turned around to the doctor and I said, I need to know the gender. So obviously doing PGT testing in the US, they do gender testing. I chose not to find out the genders of my embryo because I didn't want to get connected to the embryo just in case it failed and know, oh, that was my little girl or that was my little boy. So 5 weeks though, she turned around and she's like, what do you want? And I said, I would love a little girl, but I will take any healthy, beautiful little baby. But my dream was always a girl. And she's like, well, I have good news for you. Your embryo was a girl. So that was just the day that I kind of took a deep breath and said, right, I'm having a baby girl. This is happening. And every day from then, I positive affirmations in my mind, and just to get me through. And told my best friend and my mum and dad, and they're all just ecstatic about it. And having them as your support network and having people to really talk you through those positive affirmations to say, you're pregnant, Sam. It's okay. You are pregnant. Enjoy the pregnancy. And as much as you want to, it's still always in the back of your mind that something might happen, but it definitely started to feel real at that point.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, who was your support system going through all this?
Pretty much myself. I was my own support person. My best friend lived in LA, so she was my online and phone support, and my parents were back in Australia. So, and I really didn't tell anyone else about what I was doing. I had one friend in New York that knew, because I needed someone to drive me to my egg retrievals and home again, because you can't drive. So she definitely was aware of the pregnancy and was there to support me as well. But I'm a little bit fiercely independent, so I kind of just did everything on my own and just went through it by myself. And again, the Instagram community, that was what helped me get through. I started my Instagram page and really just was blown away about the support of the community, and everybody was just giving you these. I felt like they were my support people most of the time because they understood the process. So yeah, it was amazing.
Well, how was your pregnancy?
Pregnancy was good for the most part. I loved being pregnant, absolutely loved being pregnant. We had a few little hiccups along the way. I got diagnosed with pregnancy-induced asthma. I got GERD, so I had severe reflux and heartburn. That is not a fun part of pregnancy, let me tell you that. I say if anyone has that, get treated right away because it gets worse and worse and worse the further it goes on. And eventually I got medication for it because I couldn't even, I was coughing so much and going through panties every day with, the peasing, as they call it, the coughing and sneezing and peeing at the same time. But generally speaking, the pregnancy overall was great. I got diagnosed with a 2-vessel cord and marginal cord insertion. So obviously that was sort of a bit of doom and gloom around week 18 to 22 when Dr. Google told me all these things. Don't go down that path again. But a 2-vessel cord is where they have a single artery in the cord, where in all umbilical cords have 2 arteries and 1 vein. But otherwise, pregnancy was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. It was nerve-wracking the whole time, every little thing. But once you felt that first kick, there's just nothing like it. When I was 21 weeks and I was in an MRI machine getting an MRI on the baby's brain because there was some lack of development in her brain at the time. And that's when I felt her kick
She did not like
right in the
that.
MRI machine. And I was like, whoa, she hated the noise. She hated it. And then it was another 3 weeks after that till I really started feeling kicking. So it was 24 weeks. And once you feel that first kick, there's just no going back. That just made everything worthwhile. And that's when I started to breathe. Okay, we've got to our first viability stage. We're feeling the kicks every day. And then they get stronger and stronger. And you just start relishing in the pregnancy. So once you get past that stage,
About your doctor, how did you choose your doctor?
It was insurance driven, to be honest. So I went through and they said I had to choose a center of excellence, and I went through a fantastic clinic in New York City, and there was a bunch of doctors to choose from. There is a website or an app called Fertility IQ. which you can go and read reviews of your doctor,
Ah.
if there is some. But it's a very, very good site.
Mhm.
Highly recommend it if you are looking into doctors, because people are pretty blunt when it comes to giving reviews on fertility treatment doctors. So yeah, I just chose, and I looked at her photo and I liked her face. That was pretty much how I chose her. I liked her face and she had good reviews. So
Perfect. Was there any product that you couldn't live without or you would recommend that helped with pregnancy?
Tums, lots and lots of Tums, and Mylanta, or anything that helps the heartburn.
Yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, the wedges, the pillows.
Mm.
I didn't get a big U-shaped pillow because it just would take up so much of my bed. So I got these 2 wedges that join together under the belly, and that by far was my lifesaver for pregnancy. I can't recommend it high enough.
I haven't heard of that one.
I think it's called baby bump or something like that. I can't remember the name of the pillows, but yeah, it's just 2 wedges, sits on under both sides. So when you're side sleeping, it stops you rolling onto your back.
Mhm.
And it just supports your belly at the front as well.
Oh, that's nice.
So it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And a pillow between the knees.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So how did you prepare for birth?
I didn't do a whole lot, to be honest. I was relishing in the pregnancy. By the time sort of 28 weeks came around, I was getting ready to move countries. So I really had so much going on at the time. I didn't have a lot of time to even think about what was happening. I packed up my life at 28 weeks pregnant in New York, went to LA for a week, and then moved back to Australia at 29 plus 6. So I was just one day shy of 30 weeks pregnant before I did the 26-hour journey back to Australia. So, with that, and then my job being very demanding, I was in the middle of some big projects. I didn't think much about it. I got back to Australia and then had to set up my life here. So again, that took over a few weeks. Didn't have time to think about birth. And then it was once I sort of hit that 34, 35 weeks is when I was like, ooh, I really should think about what I'm doing here. Got registered at the hospital, and I kind of made a loose birth plan. It was more, hey, I want to give birth vaginally. I want to try without an epidural. I'd love to go all natural. I do want to do it at the hospital, but they have an amazing birthing suites here at the Sunshine Coast Hospital, and they have the big tubs, the water birth. My dream birth was a water birth, so I could do all that at the hospital. So that was pretty much the extent of my plan, was to have a water birth naturally. And that was pretty much all, and try and do it without drugs. So.
Yeah. Going back to your move, what prompted this move?
Support. Having my family, coming home. My dad's too old to travel, so wanted to come home and give him the opportunity to have his granddaughter around. And having my mum was a huge part of the decision to come home, and having my family living very close by as well. It takes a village to raise a child, and now that I have one, I can absolutely attest to that. It takes a village, and it takes a really good support network to have a child in your life.
So did the doctor talk about being induced, or were you just going to go into labor naturally?
Funny story. I was basically breached the whole time. So from 28 weeks, I was breached, and so I kind of expected... We were waiting. They're like, hey, the baby can turn. So I wasn't getting too worried about it at that point. And then I went to the hospital and had a quick bedside scan at 34 weeks, and the baby had turned and she was head down. So I was jumping for joy. It was the first time she'd ever been head down. Just 3 days prior to that, she was breached at my growth scan. So in the 3 days I'd had the growth scan to seeing the OB at the hospital, she'd turned. That's when I got very excited about, a vaginal birth, and this was my time to shine. I was ready for it. I was ready to be a birth warrior. And a week later, she'd turned again. So I was doing spinning babies like crazy, doing headstands and swimming in pools and jumping up and down, and you name it. Whatever there was that I could do to turn the baby, I was going to do it. Myself. Unfortunately, at the 36-week scan, she was breached again. Still. There was no chance. So the doctor said, right, well, we'll schedule you a C-section. At that point of time, I was grieving very, very hard because my dream was crushed. I was sure the baby was going to turn, and she didn't. And so we scheduled the C-section. Fortunately, at that stage, we didn't even have a date. So there was no dates available at the hospital because they're so busy. So they put me in a 3 days prior to my C-section. They gave me the date, but they couldn't give me the time. So it was, you're on the emergency roster because we're too busy to give you an actual time. So my plan was to go into the hospital. They'd booked me for 38 plus 6, so 1 day before 39 weeks. Time went by. She was still breached. We had a couple of extra scans in that time. My C-section date came around and I'd processed everything by that stage. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to have a beautiful belly birth. This is going to be a lovely day. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to have my C-section and walk out and I'm going to have a baby. I really sort of changed my mindset, right? I really kind of dealt with that grief very well. Well, I didn't deal with the grief very well of moving from a natural to, well, I don't say natural because all birth is natural. I moved from a vaginal birth to a C-section, and I worked through that grief with a friend and talked about it a lot and cried every day about it. But by the time I got to the C-section date, we went in 6 a.m. in the morning because they told me to go in at 6, be ready. We did a bedside scan. She was still breached, so everything looked good. We were like, yep, cool. Waiting for my doctor to come in and say, we're ready for you, because again, I was on the emergency roster.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny, about 10:30 that morning, I felt this huge movement in my belly, and I was like, God, that was a really strange feeling. And then my belly became really loose, like I was jiggling my belly, and I've never been able to do that before. And just 30 minutes later, my doctor came in and said, right, we're ready for you. So we're ready to go down to surgery. I was like, okay, great. I'm ready. I got up. I was about to walk down. She's like, oh, we better just do another ultrasound just to check the position of the baby to make sure that we know where to go in.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, cool. So I laid back down. We did a little ultrasound. She's like, the baby is head down. In the 5 hours of arriving at the hospital and 30 minutes before I was about to go into surgery, the baby flipped.
Oh my gosh, that was it.
Oh, it just, talk about emotional roller coaster, because that just went from me being vaginal birth, grieving that, to cool, now I'm doing a C-section, I'm set on this now, to, oh, by the way, now your baby's head down and we're canceling your C-section. And I'm like, whoa, how do I process this in my head? So she said, right, well, we'll start the induction process, get you the Foley catheter tonight, and then tomorrow morning we'll start the induction.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think twice about it. I was like, okay, we're here. We may as well just do it. It was against everything that I wanted previously, because I never wanted to be induced. I wanted to let my body do what it was supposed to do. I wasn't given the option to go home, but at the time it was kind of like, hey, we're here in the hospital. Let's just get this ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. So that night, or that afternoon, and about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I had the Foley catheter inserted, which is the balloons in the cervix to try and soften the cervix up. And then that was a pretty rough night, that one. We stayed in the hospital overnight. They let me stay because usually they make you go home afterwards and come back the next day. But I was already checked in and admitted, so they're like, you may as well just stay, and we'll come get you the next morning between 6 and 8 a.m. So what felt like pretty strong contractions that evening from the catheter, it was very painful.
Yeah.
Getting the catheter itself was painless, but within about 3 hours, I couldn't sleep that night. It was a lot of pain. I mean, they're huge. They're 80 mils of water in each balloon. So they're quite big. When they take them out, you're like, whoa, that was inside me. So yeah, the next morning they came in at 6 o'clock and said, well, we can't take you over yet. Everyone's decided to have their babies today. So the birthing suites were full. So I couldn't go in for the induction right away. And they said, just, it'll be a couple of hours. It was 3 p.m. that afternoon that they got me into the induction.
Wow.
So we'd been waiting already since 6 a.m. the previous day. And they took the Foley catheter out at 10 o'clock that morning because they can't leave it in more than a certain amount of time. But then waited around all day until 3 o'clock that afternoon before we went over to start the induction process. So already, that toll on my emotions was huge, going from head down to C-section to head down to induction. Played havoc on my brain. I was in a pretty good mood though overall. I was like, yep, all right, we're doing this. We're going into labor. I can't wait. I was so excited. I had no fear of labor whatsoever going into it.
Really?
I was actually excited. Yeah. I have zero fear of it. Even this day, I just think, gosh, I wish I'd got to experience, the actual pushing part, but I didn't. So, that's just ruined the end of the story for you. But, but yeah, so they broke my waters at 3:00 that day and started me on the drip, the oxytocin drip. And it gradually, I was smiling and laughing for the first 2 or 3 hours, like, yeah, this is fine. Every contraction, I was having about 4 contractions an hour, but they were pretty mild for the most part until about 7:00 at night. Then they started to pick up, and I used my breathing techniques throughout the labor. As I did do a birthing class, which I'm glad I did. But she taught me breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 8 and count it. Have your birthing partner count it for you. And I literally did that the whole time, and it worked beautifully. And that, along with the positive affirmations from the birthing partners, like, you've got this, your body was made to do this. I feel like I really handled the labor like a boss in the end. And that's, I think, because I was so excited for it and that's what I wanted. But unfortunately, 13 hours of very intense labor and the highest possible drip that they'd given in the hospital. I was on a 34 drip of oxytocin, and the max dose is typically 24. Wow. Yeah, so I was having 1-minute contractions pretty much every 45 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
By the end, and I only dilated 3 centimeters after 13 hours. The baby's heart rate started to get a little bit high, and that's when the doctor came in, and I knew it wasn't good. They're like, I think we need to take the baby out now. We need to get you into an emergency C-section. So this was almost exactly 48 hours after I first entered the hospital for my C-section originally. And at 5:26 a.m. that day, on the 30th of March, my little girl was born to a belly birth after a roller coaster.
Did you get to have her on your chest whenever she came out?
Yeah, so we did delayed cord clamping. She came out. They dropped, as soon as her head was out, they dropped the sheet. So I actually watched her being lifted all the way out as well. So I watched the whole thing happen. She was screaming murder at the time, which was fantastic to hear. So we did delayed cord clamping, and then they did take her away for probably 30 seconds just to do a quick weight and length check and put a nappy on, and they brought her back right away and skin to skin immediately. She didn't leave my side for about 4 hours after that, so which was fantastic. Part of having a beautiful belly birth is getting that skin to skin straight away, and she latched onto my breast within minutes and started feeding. And so the whole time they were stitching me up, she was feeding off me. Obviously it was probably not a lot there. It was just colostrum or nothing. She just comfort feeding. But yeah, I got to have her in my arms and on my chest the whole time. So through recovery all the way up, wheeling us up to the maternity ward, she was with me the entire time. So they didn't take her away except for that initial 30 seconds just to give her a weigh in and make sure her airways were clear, which the way she was screaming, she was totally fine. So it was a beautiful experience being able to watch her come out of my stomach, and getting that skin to skin time straight away was just, I couldn't have asked for a better belly birth.
Yeah, how beautiful. Did she already have a name whenever she came out?
I had 2 names at the time. I hadn't decided, so I had Stevie Robin and Maggie Adele, and the second I saw her face, I knew she was a Stevie. I'm a big Fleetwood Mac fan, so and Robin is my mum's name, and it's also my middle name as well, so she got the same middle name as us. I knew straight away, Stevie Town. She was coming out screaming like she was going to sing. So,
and how was your recovery?
Do you know what? I have had the easiest recovery, and I feel very lucky because I know a lot of women come out of C-sections with a lot of pain, and I was begging for a shower within 8 hours of the surgery, and I got it. I got out of bed. The nurse took me in, the midwife. I showered. I started just walking around the room. That night, I was getting up to feed Stevie. I would actually get out of bed and go and sit down in the chair instead of in the bed because, you'd been in bed for so long. I wanted to sit somewhere else. And I was walking around everywhere within that day. And then 24 hours later was the same thing, walking around the maternity ward and getting in and out. And obviously the pain was there, and I was doing the pain management, so making sure we don't never skim on the pain. Like, no matter what anyone says and how you feel, don't skip your pain meds, because you might feel great, but you skip one dose
Yeah.
and you might feel the pain. But yeah, otherwise recovery for me it's been pleasant. It's been relatively easy. Maybe doing a little bit too much, but again, that's my fierce independent self coming out, trying to do everything. But I was doing walks around the neighborhood within 6 days, 7 days of my C-section, and wandering around and sweeping the floors and doing things pretty much on my own. But having my mum here at the house has been, I definitely recommend, if you got to have someone here helping you, even if it's
Yeah.
just to tell you to stop. Because I was not willing to get up and, hey, I'll go to do some load of laundry. And Mum was like, no, sit down. You're not allowed to do any of it because you feel good, and it's deceiving, right? You got to remember you've had hundreds of stitches internally and externally, that you've got to be careful no matter how you feel. But I've done really well, pleasantly surprised.
We talked about this before we started recording, but I see your mom on Instagram and it's just great. You can really tell she's been a really great support system for you.
Yes, I couldn't do it without her, to be honest. And as we speak, doing this podcast, she's taken Stevie for a walk in the pram. So just having her around she's basically my maid. She's my support person. She's the bottle feeder if I need her at nighttime, if I have to express and give Stevie the bottle if she's not taking to my breast. So, which, that's the whole different challenge, is it? Breastfeeding. Whew.
Yeah, let's get into that. How's it been going? I know on Instagram you mentioned it's been a little challenging lately.
It's the thing that nobody prepares you for, that nobody can prepare you for, is breastfeeding. It is, you need a degree to breastfeed. It is the most challenging, painful, tiring, exhausting, and beautiful thing all at the same time. It's getting the babies to latch properly. You think their instincts would kick in. Survival instinct is, you need to latch to eat, but they don't. And you have to teach them, and you have to teach each other how to do it. And, my number one advice to anyone would be to get a lactation consultant right away, regardless of how good you think it's going, because 2 days later it'll change. I think she's had the first couple of days in hospital was relatively easy. They just latch on, and you're really only giving them colostrum at the time. But Stevie ended up having jaundice, so I wasn't getting my milk. My milk didn't come in until about day 8 or 9. Wow. So I wasn't getting much at all. I was getting maybe 5 to 10 mils of colostrum per pump, which I ended up having to pump because we needed to make sure she was getting what she needed. We had to put her on formula for the first few days as well. So after day 3 but I ended up, like I said, by day 8 or 9, my milk came in. I was expressing enough to be able to top her up with my milk instead of formula. So she hasn't had formula since day 9, which makes my heart happy, even though, fed is best. I just wanted to make sure that she was getting the best possible from me, and the more she fed from me and the more I pumped, the more my milk production came in. So I'm producing plenty of milk, well, according to the lactation consultant. It's just a matter of getting her to latch on, getting the tongue ties tested and all that sort of stuff. She's clear. She just has a recessed chin. So she's not opening her mouth properly. And many people can probably agree that the pain of them not opening their mouth is excruciating, because you come out with a flat nipple and it hurts a lot. So we're still learning. We are exclusively breastfeeding with 1 bottle at night time of my expressed milk, and that's at her witching hour, which is the time where she fusses too much on the boob. So we really make sure that I just give her the bottle to make her not fuss as much and get her back to sleep, and then I go and pump after that one, just to make sure that I'm getting the supply that we need. So,
and mentally, how are you?
I'm okay now. I will not lie to say that the baby blues didn't hit me very, very, very hard. That first week, I don't think anyone really told me about the baby blues, and I think I cried probably 23 hours out of 24 hours every single day for the first 8 or 9 days. Mentally, it is very, very hard on yourself, especially being an independent person as well. You're not independent. They're dependent on you. So I think everything just sort of hits you very hard. And not being able to breastfeed properly is also something that really hurts. It makes you feel like you're failing as a mother. But everybody has this challenge, and just the baby blues, the hormones that are racing through your body, and hit me harder than I would like to admit. I cried at the drop of a hat. I was absolutely an emotional wreck. I couldn't even speak to someone without crying. Leaving the hospital, I was bawling. Like, going into the pharmacy to pick up my medication, I was sobbing. The pharmacist came around and gave me a hug because I couldn't stop crying. It really hits you. It really hits you hard. So
Yeah.
it's something to keep on top of. And now I am booked in to start seeing a therapist to deal with not only just the baby blues, but the grief of my birth story. Having the roller coaster of not breached, C-section, induction, natural labor, and then back to emergency C-section again. It plays havoc. And then all of the induction drugs that are in your system too makes everything, those hormones, even more pronounced after birth. So, and C-sections with the anesthetic and the drugs and everything, it just really sort of comes down on you pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
But therapy is looking like it's starting next week, which I highly recommend. I've never done therapy in my life, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for the sake of myself and my baby.
Do you plan to have more kids in your 40s?
No, I'm one and done. I'm 42 years old now, and I do have those 2 mosaic embryos. I couldn't put myself through another round of IVF at this stage. I'm very happy with the one baby. So I am donating my 2 mosaic embryos, hopefully being able to put them out for adoption if they get accepted. If they don't, then I'll donate them to science rather than have them discarded. But yeah, one little baby's enough for me.
And what has been your biggest challenge being pregnant in your 40s?
Probably the looks that you get, or for me, I guess it was doubled by being 40 and single, as having sort of a bit of judgment from people of, why are you doing this on your own, and why are you doing this when you're already 42 years old? That was probably the most challenging part. I didn't get it from any friends or family, but a lot of people do frown upon it, right? It's you're going to be an old mum. Well, I'm going to be the best mum because I've had so much life experience.
Yeah.
I know life. I've lived mine. So now I can give my baby the best possible experience that they can have. So I really don't, the challenge for me was not really dealing with those people, but dealing with it in my own mind as well is, hey, it's okay. It's okay to do what I do. And that was probably the early challenge was for me. Yeah.
Is there anything you'd recommend that would help prepare someone for pregnancy and birth?
I don't think anything can prepare you for birth. But if I was to give any advice in preparing is just to be yourself and accept what you're doing, don't worry about what society says. Just do what you can, eat well, but don't cut out everything that you're not living your life. I think I mentioned it earlier is you have to live your life and really enjoy what life has given you and work with it rather than against it. It's a hard process, and it's soul destroying in a way, going through so many rounds of IVF and miscarriages and things like that. So, the hardest part really is to love yourself. And that's pretty much the best advice I can give.
I love that. What advice would you give yourself when you were pregnant if you could go back?
To enjoy it more, rather than be fearful of it so much. Really enjoying the pregnancy and what it was in my body, because I think I really only enjoyed it in those last couple of weeks, and then the last week you don't enjoy it because it hurts so much. But earlier on, my advice would be to enjoy it and embrace it, and embrace what your body's doing. Like it's a miracle that it happens, and the fact that anyone can get pregnant with the way is just mind blowing. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are, the human body is incredible in what it does. So kind of relish in it.
And where can we find you on the internet if we want to find more about you?
Yeah, my Instagram, I have a handle is solo.journey.to.motherhood. And I also have a blog, but I haven't updated that since my last round of IVF. But I do have a blog, which is Solo Journey to Motherhood as well. which goes through all the process of picking a donor sperm and the IUIs and retrieval processes and injections and all that sort of stuff.
Wonderful. Sam, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
What an incredible story. And I wish her the best of luck with therapy. And don't forget that lightning strike that happened in the middle of the show during recording. I put that at the back end of the outro music. So stay with us if you want to hear that funny part. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Monday.
Goes into a million pieces hearing that.
Sorry, that was lightning. Scared me to death.
What?
Yeah.
That was a big storm.
Yeah. It's not even raining.
Wow. Good old, I love the good old storms.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. That was great.